Power is rarely loud. Most of the time, it moves quietly through closed doors, hushed conversations, and moments the public never sees. On this night inside the U.S. Capitol, power didn't announce itself with speeches or applause. It arrived. In silence, the marble halls carried slow footsteps as senators walked with careful purpose. No one rushed, no one joked. Every face carried calculation. This was not just another vote. It was a test of authority, loyalty, and limits placed on a former president whose influence still hovered over American politics like a storm cloud that never fully passed. Inside the Senate chamber, everything appeared orderly. Desks were clean, papers neatly stacked. Flags stood motionless. To an outsider, it looked like democracy working as usual. But beneath that calm surface was deep uncertainty. This decision was about more than rules or procedures. It was about how far power could stretch before it. Snapped institutional boundaries. Some senators believed limits were necessary to protect oversight, to send a message that no individual stood above the system. Others saw the move as dangerous, politically explosive, and potentially career-ending. The room was divided not just by party lines, but by fear of consequences. Quiet conversations filled the corners. Voices dropped low. Eyes darted around. Before words were spoken, promises were hinted at without being fully stated. Warnings were delivered politely, but firmly. Political loyalty was tested in subtle ways through silence, through hesitation, through averted glances. Many senators stared at their notes, pretending to review arguments they already knew by heart. Others avoided eye contact entirely, as if looking at a colleague might reveal too much. They all understood one thing clearly. History would record the final vote. But not the pressure that shaped it. This is how major decisions are made, not only through debate, but through calculation. Every senator weighed the same questions. Silently, what would voters think? What would party leadership do? What doors would open, and which ones would close forever? When the voting began, the chamber held its breath. Lights on the electronic board flickered on green and red. Yes and no. Each light represented a choice, but also a burden. Behind every vote was a story of compromise, conviction, or fear. As the count continued, tension built steadily. Like a wire pulled tighter with each passing second. Then the final numbers appeared. A tie, perfect balance. Absolute deadlock. For a moment, time seemed to stop. No one spoke. No papers moved. The silence felt heavier than any argument made earlier. A tie meant the system had reached its limit. It meant the chamber could not move forward on its own, in that moment. The weight shifted to one person. All eyes turned toward the figure who now held the deciding power. The responsibility was no longer shared. It was singular. One decision would tip the scale and define the outcome. The pressure was immense. This was not merely a procedural vote. It was a statement about authority, about party loyalty, and about how the future would remember this night. The consequences would ripple far beyond the chamber. When the decision came, it came clearly. The tie was broken. The limits were rejected. The sound of the gavel echoed, sharp and final. It cut through the silence like a blade. There was no celebration, no applause, only reactions, some subtle, some impossible to hide. A few senators leaned back, relief washing over their faces. Others stiffened, staring straight ahead. Some looked down, knowing the moment had slipped beyond their control. The balance had shifted, and there was no reversing it now. Outside the chamber, the world was already waiting. Journalists rushed forward as word spread. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended. Headlines began forming before the full details were even clear. The public would soon hear the simplified version. A tie broken. A motion rejected. Another chapter in political conflict. But what wouldn't be seen were the long pauses, the quiet bargains, the internal struggles. The story would be told in clean lines, stripped of the uncertainty that defined it. Inside the Capitol, senators filed out slowly. Some avoided the press. Others prepared their talking points, rehearsing explanations that would satisfy supporters without revealing doubts. The institution had survived another test, but not without strain. As the chamber emptied, the desks remained. Papers lay untouched. The room returned to stillness, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet the impact of the decision lingered, invisible but powerful. This was not the collapse of democracy, but it was a reminder of how much it can bend. Power had moved quietly again through whispers, votes, and one decisive moment. And in that silence, history took another step forward, leaving behind questions that would not fade anytime soon.